Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Stephanie Chill, president of Clearwater Sister Cities. Just going to give it a second to make sure everybody gets into the room. We are in a meeting format, so your camera and your mic are visible and audible. So if you could just please mute your microphone, and you're welcome to keep your video on or off, whichever you prefer. We are going to start with this presentation and go through a PowerPoint slide to give you an overview of the Young Ambassadors program, and we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. We are recording this, so do keep that in mind if you want to have your camera on, and we will be able to post this later on our YouTube channel, on social media, if you need a refresher, if you want to go back and reference it later. Again, I'm Stephanie Chill, president of Clearwater Sister Cities. We also have on the call with us Anthony Davis, who is our vice president, and James Wallace, who is our director of the Young Ambassadors program and our lead chaperone for the 2023 trip. Right. As we go through the presentation, you can put in the chat or in the Q&A questions and answers as you go through that, and we'll address them all at the end. But we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. We have a video. It's about 4 minutes long, to just give you an overview of what past programs have been like.
Just a minute now. To go has now gone past. We're thankful you're still here.
I hope you saw something that excited you, something that inspired you, and something that made you want to learn more about this trip, which I'm sure is why you're on our call tonight. I do have to just say I went as a teenager to Japan, and it really is a life-changing experience. All the things you get to do, see, experience the culture, and all the friends that you make that you will stay in touch with. These are really where longtime friendships are forged. So in our agenda today, I'm going to cover just a little bit about Clearwater Sister Cities, so you just know who we are as an organization, and then I'll turn it over to James, who will go through some information about the trip, some tentative dates we have, what the spring looks like. We do have an orientation session for all of our young ambassadors. We're also going to touch on the costs, which are tentative at this point. A lot of this is directed by flights and what happens with our flight schedule and the ticketing for our return trip from Florida to Japan and back. And James will touch on that as well when we get to that point. And also cover host family, student applications, and then we'll open it up for questions. So Clearwater Sister Cities, we are sister cities with Nagano. Sister Cities International was started in the 50s by President Eisenhower as a way to have formal friendships and relationships between US cities and foreign cities all around the world. There are many other cities that other cities are sisters with. And Nagano started with us in 1959. The mayor came and visited 3 different cities in the US and picked us because while we are very different from Nagano, we're a coastal beach tourism center. Their land in the mountainous region area, but they also have a lot of tourism in their area. So there's a lot of parallels between our different cities that mayor at the time in the 50s thought would be a great reason for us to be sister cities and grow this relationship. Our mission is to promote cultural understanding, friendship, and global partnerships through exchanges with our sister city, Nagano, and ultimately to foster an environment that furthers international relations. The best way to learn something is to learn from others, to make friends, to help us understand what we don't know ourselves, and maybe what we don't even know we want to know. We have sponsored over 100 middle school exchange trips since 2001. So different students going on our trips. We usually take anywhere between 8 and 12 students, depending on the year. And we are Clearwater Sister Cities Inc. in particular, we're the citizen branch. So the city itself does have an exchange program as well that does high school and teacher exchanges. And that's all run through the city. But Clearwater Sister Cities is completely volunteer run. We're citizen run. We are people who have been to Japan before and want to be able to give back to that experience when people come to visit us. We also have teachers, a lot of teachers on our board and as chaperones who have been teachers on exchanges before or have been involved with our middle school programs. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to James Wallace. Oh, sorry, I've got our contact too. You can find out more information at our website, clearwatersistercities.org. We're also on Facebook, and you can email if you're asking about the Young Ambassadors program in particular. You want to email csciya@gmail.com. If you're looking for more information, some of the adult programs that we have, some of the gatherings or socials that we do together as an overall organization, you can always email clearwatersistercities@gmail.com. And at this point, I will turn it over to James. James has been on the board. I don't know, James, I think maybe you've been on the board for maybe 5 years now, and has been involved with the middle school exchanges for quite a while as well. And so he's going to go into all this information. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about himself.
Hey, thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. I'm James Wallace. I'll be the lead chaperone for the 2023 trip. A little bit about myself. I teach at Clearwater Middle School. I've been teaching for 16 years. I teach 7th and 8th grade math. I have a dog right here too. I've sponsored or supervised over 4 trips to Japan, and this will be my 5th trip. Another information we have is we have our second chaperone is Miss Cheryl. She also volunteers at Clearwater Middle. She does the origami club. She is a elementary school media specialist at, I believe, at Oldsmar Elementary, Scoutmaster, Troop 407 for 10 years. And she would be our secondary chaperone. For this trip and all trips, we always take 3 chaperones. So right now we are interviewing for our 3rd position. And that information will be detailed prior to our student selection. So our students will actually meet all the chaperones when they are interviewed in January. I'll go over that in a later slide. Tentative dates. I know this is a very popular question. We are going to travel in June. School ends May 29th. We really want to leave the first week of June. You can see here about June 5th, June 6th. And we're going to travel for about 14 days, all the way up to the 20th, maybe the 19th. Our trip is really based, as Stephanie said, on the cost of the airline. That is really 60% of the total cost of the trip. So we are, we always play by the calendar of the airlines. This so far looks to be our, like I said, tentative schedule, June 5th to about June 20th. You should think about. I'm going to go over all these dates, the cities later on too. To give you an idea, this is more or less a travel, not a vacation. To give you an idea, this is just 2 days. Our itinerary for 2 days. Tokyo, and on the right side is Osaka. So you can see there from 8 in the morning all the way up to 7:30 p.m. We are traveling, we are exploring, we are seeing, we are visiting different sites. And you can read, if you look over, it is a full day between cultural temples to, in this case, the anime district in Harajuku. So there was a lot, we do a lot with our trip in the 7 days of travel. I'm going to go over this, but really I'm going to call this more of a travel than a vacation. Orientations, as Miss Stephanie was talking about. We're going to have 4 summer orientations to get everyone prepared for Japan. The dates are settled. It's going to be the 2nd Saturday every month. And hold on a second. We're going to do the 2nd Saturday every month. The dollar signs is when we collect payment. I'm going to go over the cost of the trip, but we do take 2 payments for the total, for the breakdown of the trip. The first payment is going to be paying our airline tickets, and the 3rd payment will be paying for hostel reservations, JR passes, and such. And every orientation, we go over more of the trip. By the 3rd orientation, by April, is when you start, is when you get the host family information. So what's nice about our final orientation is you will actually meet the host families prior to the trip. And with all the Zoom technology, I can't imagine a nice little video interaction beforehand. Back in 2008, back in 2019, we used to just do emails. So it'd be nice to see a nice change. Okay, I wrote down an all-inclusive trip because the payment or what the money we collect for the trip includes everything. Food, drinks, transportation, entertainment, lunch, dinner, snacks, ice cream, all included in the trip. The only money that your child will ever be bringing is for souvenirs. If they don't want to bring any money or any souvenirs, they will have exactly the same experience as someone who brought lots of money for souvenirs. So it's an all-inclusive trip. To give you an idea, I wrote down 3 costs of the 3 past trips. Obviously, this is before hikes and stuff. But looking at so far the breakdown of the trip for flights and just inflation, we can expect somewhere between $3,000 to $4,000. We do want to keep the trip as minimum as possible, but as I showed you in the previous slide, we do a lot with our students, and a lot of our money, everything we've collected, we put towards the trip. 60% of the trip is broken down by the airfare. Right now, we're still shopping around for group flights. We've been contacting major travel agencies and the airlines directly. So, with more time, hopefully the price will come down. But, by the first orientation of February, you will have a complete cost breakdown of everything. Nothing will be tentative, because by that point, we'll be buying our tickets and reservations for Japan. Travel in Japan. As I was saying, we are a group of about 13 people, 10 students, 3 chaperones, and we do not use Uber or taxis. We will be using mass transportation, subways, bullet trains, ferries, walking. So our day, as you saw, from 8 a.m. to all the way to 7:30 p.m. is us going from one district of Tokyo all the way to the other district of Tokyo by either like a train or just simply walking 3 miles a day. Because we try to pack so much on this trip in so little time, we push our kids hard, especially on days in Tokyo and Osaka, because there's a lot to see. But it's by the end, it's always rewarding when you look over the photos and your travel books. I know. All right, host families. Another popular question was, who picks those families? And how are they selected? So the city of Nagano actually works on this on their own side. They vet and train their host families. Actually, there's a very extensive application they go through. They don't just select anyone to be a host family. Usually the host family the student will have to be of the same age of our young ambassador. So to give you an idea, if we take 5 young female young ambassadors and 5 male young ambassadors, they will be split up between the same sex host families with the same interest and the same age as your own child. So if your son likes baseball and collects Pokemon cards, he's going to be paired with a Pokemon baseball player in Japan. And that family will be selected, trained by the city of Nagano. And while they're staying with their host family, they are basically cared for. So all essentials are taken care of: food, transportation. If they got a boo-boo, their host mom will put a Band-Aid on it. They are basically cared for the 5 days we're in Nagano. Applications. So if you are interested, or if you're looking for an application, they are found on our webpage. That was clearwatersistercity.org. Student applications are due January 13th. Our students will be interviewed between the 16th and 19th. Just one day of interviews. One interview per student. They'll be interviewed by our board members, or our boards, Clearwater Sister City board members. Excuse me. And again, we're going to be selecting around 10 students for our trip. 10 students with 3 chaperones. All right, I went quick, it went fast. Questions? If there are any questions, we'll, I guess, take them now. Well, I get a drink of water too.
I don't have questions. I just want to say hi, everybody. Long time no see. James, you look fantastic with your little baby.
This is Miss Betty. Betty has actually chaperoned 2 or 3 trips in the past.
Three times, yeah.
3 times. She was actually, she moved to Japan. She loved it so much, she moved to Japan and then
came back.
And came back.
Yeah. But met with Stephanie before, right? You had Stephanie. We've met before.
Yes, we have. It's great to see you, Betty.
Yeah, long time ago. I mean, 2 years ago. And I see Anthony too. So it's just, hi everybody. It's nice to see you all.
Miss Betty, I any information or suggestions you would like to add with your experience of chaperoning the trip?
No, I think you have pretty much all the information is very consistent, very similar from what we had before. The only difference I noticed is that now we're including the snacks and the drinks, which was not part of the budget before. The difference in the price it went up, but it's normal. Everything went up, especially the airline tickets went up. Across board. So that's an unexpected increase in the price. But everything else is good. The orientations are good. It's very organized, and I'm just here saying hi to everybody and just looking forward to working with you again and see what I can do to help for sure. And Veronica said hi, by the way.
James, we do have a question that's coming through the chat. How many student applications do we receive each year?
Ooh, that's a great question. Let's see, in 2019, we took 10 students, 3 adults, but we had, I believe, 18 students interviewed that year. In 2018, we actually took 12 students because we had over 20 applicants. With COVID, I anticipate a lot of applicants this year. So when you go through the application, please be very detailed about yourself, if you've traveled, or even if you are a fan of Japanese culture. We want to take not just any student, but the best fit for our group. So if you have travel experience, if you have, if you speak Japanese or even know anything about Japanese culture, we want everything in that application to go in there so we pick the best student.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on the chaperone committee for the 2020 trip, which unfortunately was canceled midway through our orientations because of the pandemic. But we had, I think, 10 students who were in the program, but we had close to 18 or 20 applications that year as well. And it really does, when we have those interviews, students able to speak about themselves, interests, why they're interested in going to Japan, what this experience would mean to them. Chaperones are looking for what this trip would mean to them. And for students who are, willing to take risks and experience new things, because when you're in Japan, of course, there is McDonald's available and KFC, but we do try to get our students to try different types of foods. And there's a lot of seafood in Japan. There's a lot of different experiences, even the ice cream. I know one year, I think the students all tried a different flavor, and I think sesame seed, which ends up being a black colored ice cream, was a surprisingly pleasant one but everyone tried it, even though it was a little bit different, and one that we don't have here in the US or in Florida very often. All right, we have another question. Does each kid stay with one host family, or are they paired up?
Great question. In the 4 trips I've experienced, each student gets their own host family, and there's hardly any pairing up. For safety reasons, I had to go further into that because I can't. Betty, you lived in Japan. How safe do you feel Japan was when you lived there?
Yeah, it's 0.01% criminal rate, so it's very safe.
Yep.
I have no recollection of anything or any event that was like a red flag or anything. It's a very safe place, and families are checked. So as far as I know, and all the experiences that I had were very positive. It's a very respectful culture. So I think that our students will be very safe for that matter. I do have a question about how we are promoting the program right now. Are you sending brochures to all the middle schools through the Pony, or is it Miss Benton involved, or because I saw the application deadline is in January?
We'll talk after the meeting about that.
Oh, okay.
I want to address this because I think I might better answer this question for the safety of host families.
Okay.
Remember, the city of Nagano will be selecting these host families, vetting them and train them on how to take care of an international student. But at the same time, we're going to pair these students up with exactly the same interests and likes and age of someone in Japan. And like I was saying before, you're going to meet them before you leave. By the final orientation of May, I would imagine you had a Zoom meeting with them face to face. You meet their family, you're going to meet them. And with this experience, a lot of our young ambassadors become host families for themselves, for our students when they come over to visit us. So yeah, it's really, really good process. They do a very good job with pairing kids. If there's any reason why a kid needs to be paired, like if there's two brothers that go on the trip, that could be an exception. We could talk about that. But, you know, friends, no, we don't really, you know, I can't really imagine that.
I would add to that, another thing to consider is that when we do the host family program, part of it is for your student, for your child to be immersed in culture. They get to live with the family who they're with, a child who is the same age as them, has the same interests. And even, you know, even though not everybody speaks fluent English in Japan, as we wouldn't expect, technology today makes it really easy to communicate. The students at that point have been studying English for quite a while in their schools, so communication isn't a major issue. Also, the chaperones are in host families as well, but they're all in the same area. They're all in the same city within Nagano. So if something does happen, a chaperone is a phone call away.
Or even a
We are very
mile.
vigilant about making sure that the chaperones know where all the students are at all points of the trip, even when they're with their host family as well.
Yeah, let me say also, Stephanie, we check in every day. So when the students go to school, the chaperones go to school. When the students go to extracurricular activities, so do the chaperones. And when they go home for dinner, is the only time we separate. But there is like, we're in the same city, we're in the same facility. So I'm a phone call away, or I'm even a mile down the street down, sometimes that accessible. Is the program open to all schools? And the answer is yes. Actually, we're part of the city of Clearwater, or we're sponsored by the city of Clearwater, but Pinellas County Schools Foreign Language has promoted us in their middle school department. We've also explored outside Pinellas County. So if a student in, let's say, Tampa or Pasco, or even goes to a private school, we're interested in our program. We've always opened our boundaries to everyone, as long as we're not overstepping on another exchange program.
Right, and because we have a longstanding affiliation with the city on overall our relationship with Nagano, we have their support with the program, and we get additional help. But because we're a nonprofit and we stand on our own as an organization, this is our program. So we do not have a city or a regional restriction for applicants who are interested in the program. You just have to be a middle school student.
Oh, I'm sorry, did someone say something?
I just wanted to add, remember that the city of Nagano also has the cultural section and the two contact people that they are in charge of us when we go there, and they also speak English. So in case of any emergency, there is always someone from the city who is taking care of the group, and it is very easy to communicate with them in case of any emergency or questions or something like that.
Uniforms. Actually, yes, we're going to be traveling with many different type of uniforms. When we travel to Japan, we're going to have a cotton shirt that we'll be wearing. When we get to Japan at school, we're going to be using like a polo polo Clearwater Sister City shirt. That will be part of our school uniform. So I guess when the students attend schools, they'll be wearing their Clearwater Sister City polo along with like khaki pants. And that stuff is providable. That stuff will be needed in Japan, but sometimes it was provided or sponsored by the city of Clearwater, but yes, they have uniforms. COVID or sickness. Let me address the sickness first before we do COVID. Yes, we've had students get sick in our trip. So we travel with 3 chaperones. In the event of student were to get sick or needs to be bed rested, one of our chaperones will stay behind, where the other 2 will take the other remaining students on their excursion. We've had that done in the past where a student got an ear infection when they flew into Tokyo. So we were able to separate that student. That student went with the chaperone to a local, like an urgent care, and with international insurance, was able to get treatment. And that student was bed rested for, I believe, let's say 2 days. And then afterwards was able to join the group. So with the policy of 3 chaperones, we always want to make sure that someone can stay behind where the others are not affected. As for COVID, This will be our first year traveling with this COVID. So I'm going to treat this based on every travel restriction. So if it's quarantine, if it's separation, by all means, with the accommodations with the hostel, we will be accommodating, or we will follow the travel restrictions. But that's going to be something that we're going to really discuss in our orientations, is what is the exact plan for COVID, because I have never experienced yet a COVID experience. I've only experienced minor, let's say, infections. But Stephanie, how else would you address that?
I think that covers a lot of it. We follow whatever the country's guidelines are in. So while we're in the US, whatever our exit or re-entry policies are, we are following that. In Japan, it is more restricted currently, but they are starting to open up. And so there may be some restrictions, or if somebody falls sick with quarantine or falls sick with COVID, there may be a quarantine restriction. But in that case, we do have a plan to have a chaperone with that student or students, depending on, if one person gets it, we would assume that other people were exposed as well. And so we would address it at that time. But we do have a plan to have, no student on their own. There is always a chaperone nearby. And then we will encourage you to get medical travel insurance. And we also will have a level of travel insurance as well. And again, that's part of that cost, which we're still figuring out and looking at as well.
I have no problem taking a child to urgent care in Japan. I've had experience with that. And, if your child suffers anything, that would be my job. I'm very comfortable with that.
Yeah, we'd need to double check on what the actual quarantine restrictions are in Japan. In the US right now, most places follow the CDC guidelines, which state that after 5 days of separation, you're good to go. Not a medical professional. I can't tell you why things are the way they are, but hopefully Japan would have a similar quarantine so it wouldn't take up the whole trip. That is the worst case scenario, is that somebody gets sick in Japan, they're just stuck in Tokyo in a room for 14 days if they're still doing that longer quarantine requirement. But we'll have to check into that more in detail. And then we would bring that child home as soon as possible after a quarantine. If the trip is no longer happening, if it's taken the full 2 weeks, or if they got sick at the end of their trip and the other students returned home, a chaperone would still stay in the country with that student wherever they are and return home as soon as they're able to.
Yes.
Great questions. Are kids responsible for their own passports in Japan, or are they under the care of the chaperones?
All right. I love this one. So my first year chaperoning this trip was interesting because we allowed the students, we allowed the chaperones to hold the passports. And it became, that was definitely fun. What I fast forward many years later, what I end up learning is we are going to require everyone, including the chaperones, to wear what's called like a passport holder that goes around the neck. So basically, it's like a travel pouch that goes around your neck, and it is simply just holds a passport. It can hold maybe what that will ensure is every day when we travel, it's so much easier to do a quick passport check when it's right on your neck. Whenever you need to access it, it's right there always with you, and you can never lose it if it's tied around your neck. So that right there is our best friend, is our passport holder. And we have never, ever lost a passport ever in my trips. But it was so much easier just to have individual students hold on to their passport.
We also would encourage you to keep a copy at home. And we do ask for a copy of the passport as well, so that we can verify that one, your student is able to travel internationally. Your passport cannot expire, I think, within 6 months of your return date. So it has to have, we have to double check that time frame of the passport. And then if something were to happen, knock on wood, we haven't had an issue, but if something were, we can get that to the embassy with our contacts and get that expedited to make sure that they have a passport to return home when needed.
Yeah, and the chaperones will be carrying a copy of everyone's passport in their, I'll be carrying as the lead chaperone everyone's copy of the passport, but I will not be carrying their passport. Ooh, a great question. All right, so everyone has a smartphone, and for only, I don't know, 10, 15, $20 more a month, if you call your provider, you can get an international phone plan. So part of our requirements for our young ambassadors is to have an international phone plan, just for 1 month. Every provider has a program like this, and it's texting for free, and calls are very limited. But that's number one, is your child will have access, or you're going to have access to your child 24/7 through their cell phone. Second is the chaperones. You're going to get our contact information. So if you want to text me, because it's going to be free for you and free for me, I will gladly update you on the information. One thing that we have to push is our students have so much fun, or they're just so overwhelmed with Japan that they always forget to call home. So one of our first things we do when we check in our hostel is everyone gets a phone call home. So yes, I would say every day they check in with their families, because every day they're going to check into a hostel with Wi-Fi. So they can always have Wi-Fi access to. And I believe the difference is only like 18-hour difference in time. So like right now would be around daytime in Japan. So the time, or Betty can help out with that.
Depending on daylight savings time, it's usually 12 or 13
okay.
hours.
Okay.
But when you consider that if you're reaching out to your student because you haven't heard them, if it's 9 a.m. your time, it's 9 p.m. their time, and they're probably going to bed.
Yeah, so at least
so James and the chaperones do try to time that. But I would also encourage you to just remember when you were their age, how did you keep in touch with your parents? I know I didn't have a phone. Phones weren't a thing yet. But think about this as sleepaway camp. You want them to immerse and to have this experience. You want to be able to check in with them. You will have all of the chaperones' phone numbers and contact information. If for some reason you need to get a hold of your child and you aren't able to directly, you can always get a hold of a chaperone or myself, and I will be able to get you in touch with somebody in Japan as soon as possible. But also, as James said, they're having fun. They're immersing in culture. They're making new friends. And so you want to be able to give them that space and let them check in by email or by text, or maybe that one phone call when they're calling in from when they check in the hostel.
I also forgot the good news is we have travel Wi-Fi. When we go to Japan, we'll be traveling with almost like a pocket Wi-Fi that has data service for everyone. So if your child has a smartphone but does not have an international plan, they're going to have Wi-Fi, and then they can message you through whatever social media. Because with the pocket Wi-Fi, it's really good. I could turn it on, turn it off, but more or less, it's always going to be on 24/7 for our students when they're traveling throughout the city. It helps with communication and such, especially with you guys.
And WhatsApp, I think, is still a pretty popular app that a lot of people globally use for Wi-Fi calling or texting. So that's one that we encourage people to use. And you can also have a group set up. James, I'm not sure if you're looking at this, but in the past, we've also had social media groups. We've had a private group for Facebook or a private WhatsApp channel that people were able to kind of communicate, post pictures. And so you get a sense of being in contact and staying in touch, even if it's not a personal phone call multiple times a day. If my child is chosen and we pay the February payment, but something comes up and we have to withdraw with the trip, do we get a refund?
Once we put the payment down for the airline tickets, it is maybe travel insurance might be a better option here, because this is going to be a hard situation. The first payment pays your airline ticket. That is not going to be refundable unless the airline wants to give you a refund. That is out of our control. The second payment is when we purchase hotel reservations, exchange money and such. That I can see us, because that is our physical holding the money. We can almost like refund that, or not refund that, but we can work with you on that. But the first payment is going to be a hard one, because that is our airline deposit. Stephanie, anything?
It comes down to like the flights, really. Once that flight payment is made, it then leaves our hands, and it's up to the flight policy. which is also dependent on what the requirements are for minimum group travel. So, you know, certainly get travel insurance if you think that there may be an issue. In 2020, we had made our first payment, but we actually hadn't bought the flight ticket. So we were able to refund everybody when everything started to get
Oh, that's
canceled
good.
last minute. So we will let you know when that flight, that the airlines are purchased, so that you know that that has passed on, that that is confirmed. And at that point, we're looking at probably non-refundable from that point forward. Okay, we have another question. Do students get to exchange their money to yen?
So as I was saying, the trip is fully and paid for. The only money that your student or your child should bring is basically souvenir money. And we encourage them to exchange the money prior to Japan. So Countryside Mall has a exchange booth, and they are, I think it's only $5 is their service fee. But whatever souvenir money or yen you want to bring, we're going to ask you exchange it prior to leaving for Japan. In Japan, it's a little, it's going to be very hard to exchange money in Japan because we are not going to take all 13 of us to go down to a post office or bank to see an ATM machine. That is unfair to the group. So when we are traveling in Japan throughout the cities, we ask that you have your souvenir money already with you. When you're in Nagano and if you run out of money, that is a great opportunity for your host family to give you a great tour of the Nagano banks, and you can go through the ATM machine there. Yeah. Credit cards are also acceptable over there, and make sure you just notify your credit card provider. But our young ambassadors, if they're unfamiliar with just holding on to cash, they can always bring their parents' cards.
I personally would encourage sending cash, because it is a little bit easier sometimes, especially in some of the more touristy cities, like some places in Kyoto. Some of the smaller shops may be cash only. And it's really safe to carry money. Japan, as Betty and James had mentioned earlier, is a very safe place. If you were to leave your phone or a wallet or a $20 bill, 20 yen bill, somewhere, well, 20 yen bill will only be $2. But if you were to leave money somewhere on a train, you could still go back and somebody most likely will have turned it into the train station.
Yes.
So I wouldn't be concerned about carrying cash. It is easier to exchange over here. If you're able to get to the Countryside Mall, that is a good location. Some banks will order you yen. If you order it early enough in advance, you'd have to check with your bank to see if that's something that they do. Another place that sometimes does exchanges is AAA. And there used to be one off of, I think, Belcher and Gulf to Bay, which may not be there anymore. But AAA in the past has done exchanges as well for funds. And James, how much would you recommend for students bringing spending money?
All right. Going to Japan is like going on any major trip to, I would say, in America. If you were to go to New York City and you want to buy souvenirs, it's just like going to Tokyo. You're gonna buy magnets, you can buy shirts, you can buy little things that for grandma, grandpa. So it really depends on what's your souvenir budget. Because remember, we are gonna pay for everything. As Betty was saying, how she was shocked that ice cream is now included in the budget. Snacks and even lunch is included in the budget. So we are gonna have the same trip as if you came with no money. But really, the traveling in Japan is gonna be like traveling anywhere. Just make a little list of who you have to buy for. The exchange rate is pretty friendly. It's almost dollar for dollar, or maybe $1.10 to $1. It's really comparable. So if you want to bring $400 in cash, that's going to be almost $400 in yen, or vice versa. But just imagine that's going to be a lot of money that they're going to carry around, because it's not just $400 bills. They're going to give you, 5s and 10s and 20s. And next thing you know, it's a lot of money that you're going to be traveling with. So we want to keep it limited too. But to give you an idea, I bring $200 every time I go to Japan. I just bring $200, and that's my allowance money for souvenirs.
Yeah, I would say probably 150 to 200 or so, because unless you're planning to buy tech, a camera or something, which we have pretty comparable technology nowadays, you're going to be spending things on smaller souvenirs, on maybe additional snack food. So probably not major purchase items. If you wanted to get, one thing that I've seen that's popular as a souvenir item in general is like travel or tourist kimonos. And those can range from $50 to $100 depending on where you are, but bringing back something like that would maybe be a larger purchase.
If I can step in here, I'd like to recommend that no one get any ideas about bringing a sword back from Japan. Somehow, some of our students in the past have thought that this was a great idea, and it may be cool to have once you get it back, but it's really hard to take a sword on an airplane.
Yep.
And it's really expensive to ship it back. So please,
That's what I was
disabuse
gonna
yourself
do.
of any thoughts of doing that.
They call that the Matt rule, because that was from Matt who bought that sword.
In addition to that, right now the exchange rate is $1 for 131.
Oh,
So
wow.
compared to 2 or 3 years ago, it's a lot more convenient. So you get to buy more things right now. Yeah.
And on that subject, we may need to be a little bit careful about making year-to-year comparisons because they've had inflation too.
Yes, but
Really?
you can certainly always Google and see kind of what the current exchange is to give you an idea when you're trying to plan out how much you're allotting for your student to bring. We did another question came in. How much luggage do students bring? Can they bring empty luggage for
All
souvenirs?
right. So we've really figured out the luggage puzzle, I believe. You're going to be allowed one large suitcase. You can max out as big as you want, 65 inches. I don't know, whatever the regulation is. Make sure it has wheels, make sure there's a handle, make sure your child can carry it. Because guess what? When they get out of the airport, they're going to take that luggage, that big suitcase, and they're going to walk all the way to that bus, take it on the bus to the hostel. Because we don't take Ubers, we don't take taxis, we take ourselves. In that big luggage, you're going to pack an empty duffel bag. Not a suitcase that takes up too much room, a duffel bag. That duffel bag is going to be your souvenir bag. And it can be as big as you want. Because at the end of the trip, that is a free bag for you to travel home. And we are going to mail our suitcases from Nagano to Tokyo. So by the end of the trip, when you have these large bags and suitcases of souvenirs, we're going to ship them by mail to the airport. And your child will never have to worry about touching them again. Or I'm sorry, when they get to the airport, they will. But by doing this, they're going to have a free duffel bag out because you get 2 bags checked in for the airport. This way they have a souvenir bag. Then they have their own bag that they traveled with, and there's no, and a backpack too. So there's no other, whatever. But we don't want anyone traveling with 2 bags ever in Japan. It's going to be 1 bag when we go from city to city. It's the most convenient. If they have 2 suitcases, we're going to put them in 1 because there's no way that you're going to be able to. It's not like I don't know.
They're moving themselves around. So you have to
Yeah.
consider that nobody is there to help them drag their suitcase. So it has to be a size that is comfortable for your child, as well as light enough that they can move it potentially up and down a couple sets of stairs, depending on what train station they're at or what the hostel is like as well.
I mean, right there, it's gonna be the summer. It's gonna be hot. We're gonna be traveling in our suitcase or living in our suitcases. So there's no need to have makeup and all of these accessories because it's just gonna weigh you down. It's really gonna be an essential trip. Do hostels have elevators? Yes, actually,
It's a
well,
good question, because in Europe, sometimes a lot of places do not have
okay.
elevators.
Yeah, they do. They have an elevator. We haven't really. I'm presuming we're going to use the same hostels in the past. I would like to. If we do, then yes, they do have elevators. But there is one. Betty Anthony, you may remember. There's one train station subway that you have to go. It's almost like 2 flights of stairs, 2 stories of stairs that you have to carry your suitcase up. It's when we first get to Atlanta, Tokyo.
Is this Asakusa?
It could be. It's one of those. It's one of those train stations where it's.
Yeah, that's a
really
rough
big.
climb. It's a rough climb at first.
That is the only
Tokyo or
time I would say
Shinjuku or Asakusa, one of those 3, where we have to walk like forever. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the only time we're going to struggle I think.
Osaka is that one that we get straight from the airport, and it has like a never-ending stairs
Yes.
to, yeah, that's a tough one. And no elevators.
No elevators on that one. That's the only time we no elevators.
Yeah.
If you have traveled internationally, one of the things I'll say is the hostels that we stay at are really nice. And hostels in Japan
Oh,
are
they're super nice.
wonderful. They have great amenities. They're very clean. They're very modern. And so they're my favorite places to stay, honestly, when I'm traveling, especially when I'm in a group, because you can get more out of your stay there, and there are more gathering places when you do want to hang out with everybody.
I just typed in the message. This is the Shinosaka Youth Hostel. To give you an idea, this hostel only appeals to international travelers. So if you were someone to look for cheap accommodations in Japan, you cannot register for this place. It's only for youth travelers. It is on the 23rd floor. The elevator is locked after 11 or 10 p.m. So for safety reasons, it's like lights out. It's the most safest location I've ever been in. That place is one of our mainstays, and it's a very, look it up, Google it. It is gorgeous. You'll like it. It's better than, I say, at a hotel we stay here. The other hostel that we normally stay, I can put it in the chat room. It's this one. There's a change. I have to Google the exact name of it, but that's another one of our hostels that that only appeals to our youth travelers. So a lot of times you're not going to see like a grown man mixed with these hostels. There's going to be a great opportunity for our young ambassadors to meet other exchange students on these as they travel.
James,
So
it was called Sakura.
Oh, that's yep.
And it's actually a chain. There are locations around Tokyo. So
And at the hostels, we try to we are grouping our students together. So
Yes.
they don't have individual rooms. There will be, I think it's usually 3 or 4 or up to
5
5
or 6
and divided by gender as well.
Yeah, we pack. This is bunk beds. Our youth hostels have bunk beds, and I will be there's an adult in every room. So there will be no rooms unaccommodated by children or without an adult.
Without an adult.
in years past, some of the hostels that we've stayed at, like the one in Asakusa, have actually put us on our own floor.
Yes.
I don't think we can guarantee that, but they do try to give us a good experience.
And the one in Shinosaka gave us a suite in which we had the opportunity to sleep on our tatami mats instead of in a bunk bed. And that was a great experience. Our students really, really enjoyed that, to have the opportunity not to sleep in a traditional bed, but on a bamboo floor.
I think we got one more question. This would be a good one to wrap up with because we're closing in on an hour. So with students happening around January 16th to 19th, how and when do we find out if our child is selected? And is there a wait list if there are too many people?
Well, Stephanie, Anthony, myself will be part of the interview process when we meet your child. We'll be there on those days. Your child will go through only one day of interview. And we'll, if there's 18, 20 kids, we'll go through that in the 3 days. Our board members or the people that interview will get together. We're going to, we all have a little ranking system. We'll check off who best fits our trip. And then I would even say by that 19th or the 20th, not the 19th, but more or less the 20th or that following week, you will be notified if you were selected or not. A waiting list, yes, we do have a waiting list. We do have students sometimes, drop out and stuff. If we have a lot of 6th graders who are applying for the trip, if you're not selected, this is not something this will always be available for the following year. So if you are not selected, but yet still a middle school student, apply next year. We've had students apply for 2 or 3 years before they were selected to go on the trip. So, as involved you are, we're involved. Or
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely I'm sure when we have the interviews, we'll let you know which date we've kind of settled on that will make that announcement, and you'll be notified either way if your student is selected or not, or if they've been selected for a wait list if we do have a lot of applications coming in. All right. Are there any other last questions? Is there a preference for older kids to be selected versus younger? We try to find a good composition of the group, but certainly the age factors in the fact that if there is a student who is a 8th grader and will not have this opportunity again, and they're a good fit, as well as a 6th grader is a good fit, that 8th grader may be selected over the 6th grader. Because that 6th grader will have more opportunities to apply in the future. But our trips are usually pretty diverse. We usually have each age group represented, each grade represented within the makeup of each cohort.
Yep. And to be honest, we will be selecting the best who fits our group. So if your child is, to give you an idea, how does your child like to eat? If I were to take your child into a restaurant, is it just chicken fingers and French fries all the time? Or we're going to be exploring other meals? Because when we travel in Japan, we're going to be sitting in restaurants for every meal. Your child will be given a menu and they'll be selecting their own lunch, dinner, and breakfast. They're very independent. They're going to have their own choice. Obviously, we don't want to have the same meal always. So we want someone who's going to be very adventurous, exploring, open to an adventure. That's good.
Hey, if you have any other questions that come up, again, please email us. You can email csciya@gmail.com, and we will get back to you as soon as we're able to. Or you can send a message as well through Facebook, and we can get that directed to James. Question, my child is a vegetarian, will that be a problem?
Nope.
There should be
We
lots
have
of
vegetarians.
options.
We've had students who only eat fish. We have students who only eat rice. I mean, we've had taken trips. We have students who have food allergies. We're very aware of all that stuff. And vegetarian, by the way, is going to be great. You're going to love the food in Japan as a vegetarian.
Lots of vegetarian options for
Oh,
sure.
great. I'll become a vegetarian just because that.
All right. Thank you all for joining
Thank you.
us, and reach out if you have any other questions.